Good afternoon and welcome to the 43rd Annual Whitewater Valley Art Competition. My name is Carrie Longley. I'm an Associate Professor of Fine Art at IU East and will be serving as the moderator today. We will be watching two pre-recorded rounds of jurying. After each round, we will enter the live portion of the event where the jurors will answer questions from the audience regarding decisions to include or exclude pieces from the exhibition. I request that all participants other than the jurors mute their microphones. If you have questions regarding the jurors' decisions, you may type your question using the in-meeting chat at any time. The chat function can be accessed in the bottom center of your screen. When you pose your question or comment, please reference the number in the bottom left corner of the image. At the end of each round, one of the meeting hosts will then read your question to the jurors. Before I introduce our jurors, I would like to thank Kira Landis, John Dalton, and the Office of External Affairs for assisting in technical support. The Fine and Performing Arts Department Chair, Ann Kim, and the Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences, Darren Snyder. Also, thanks to the tireless promotional efforts of our gallery coordinator, Nate Kuznia, this year's competition is once again very competitive. 66 artists living in Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Michigan, and Ohio, working in a wide range of mediums, including painting, drawing, ceramics, printmaking, fibers, sculpture, photography, and metalsmithing, submitted 239 images featuring 193 works of art. After individual review, the jurors have curated an exhibition of 55 works of art created by 42 artists. This year, our panel of jurors exemplify a breadth and depth of expertise in fine arts, and we are grateful to have them serve in this year's competition. Juror Marcella Hagbart is a visual artist, curator, and educator living in Central Ohio. She is a professor of studio art at Kenyon College in Gambier, Ohio. Her current work explores aspects of knowledge, self-reflection, the environment, and symbolic states. She received her MFA in Studio Art Photography from the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque, and a BA in Studio Art from the University of Alaska, Anchorage. Her work has been included in exhibitions at the Girls Club Collection in Fort Lauderdale Station Independent Projects in New York, Cleveland's Museum of Contemporary Art, and at the University of Notre Dame, among others. She has received recognition and support for her work from the OAC Individual Excellence Grants, Kenyon College Faculty Grants, the Midwest Society for Photographic Educators, and the Great Lakes Colleges Association. Welcome, Marcella. As a teenager, juror Brigham Dimmick studied at the Barnstone Studios, a private-run atelier where he developed a portfolio that helped him earn a 4-year scholarship to the Tyler School of Art, where Brigham received a BFA in painting. Before going to Indiana University for an MFA in painting, Brigham spent 4 years hitchhiking across the country, living in Northern California, traveling in Mexico, painting houses, and drawing. His teaching career includes 4 years each at the Savannah College of Art and Design and the University of Pennsylvania, as well as years as a part-timer at Moore College of Art and St. Joseph's University. Since 2002, Brigham continues as a drawing program head at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and currently serves as the chair of the Department of Art and Design. Some of his drawings are in the corporate collections of Morgan Stanley and Fish and Richardson, and in the university collections of Lamar University, Emporia State, and St. Ambrose University. Welcome, Brigham. Juror Kathy Mayhew has been the director of exhibitions at the Fitton Center for Creative Arts in Hamilton, Ohio since 2000. In this role, she curates, designs, coordinates, and installs a wide range of exhibitions of visual art. She also leads gallery talks, creates community collaborative projects, and serves on Hamilton's Street Spark Mural Selection Committee. After years of collaborating with other artists to present their work, she is reemerging as an art maker herself. Kathy holds a BFA in painting from Miami University and a graduate certificate in museum studies from the University of Cincinnati DAP. Welcome, Kathy. The process for jurying the images today is simple. Jurors will score each art piece as a yes, no, or maybe. Artworks that receive 2 no votes will not progress to the next round. I want to applaud the artists that entered this year's competition. It takes courage and the desire to continue to grow and learn to enter your artwork for review. Regardless of the outcome of jurying, every artist that entered the competition should be proud. Without further delay, let's begin round 1.
Okay, well, I was intrigued by this mixed media work, especially with the vintage textiles and the quite well done rendering of the drawing portion as well. One in particular caught my eye, so I'll say, I guess, maybe on this one.
And I'll say maybe as well. I think I prefer the another one from the series the most, but to add on to what Marcella said, I would say that there's a kind of interesting relationship to kind of illumination and stained glass quality that comes through this work.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the artist is using an unusual mix of media, and it's just beautifully balanced.
This one was a no for me.
And this one was a no for me as well. And I would probably say that I'm kind of swayed by how this one kind of shifts its reading from something that might have echoes back to kind of like religious art to something that's kind of like contemporary and kind of social media wise, which kind of shifts the reading away from that kind of like stained glass.
I respond to the whole series. This was my least favorite of the 3, so I would give this one a no.
This one was my favorite in the series. I think I'm responding to the negotiation of the idea of landscape, and also the fabric here really seems to have a lot of different textures, so that its fabricness is forwarded with the same compelling drawing qualities.
And I don't anticipate agreeing always with Marcella, but I do wholeheartedly hear. And to kind of build on that, I think that there's a interesting dynamic between the fabric and the rendering in that it's an asymmetrical composition where her face is actually illuminated by the textile sun, which kind of adds another kind of layer of synergy between the 2 media.
I agree with everything that's being said. This one is compelling to me because of the rendering itself is gorgeous, and there seems to be more of a sense of space in this one, with that the way the fabric is utilized makes it feel like a landscape. So just balance and composition is the strongest.
The rat, the blue rat, and the sort of the gesture and the over thing, the words over with the smile, and she's forced into this kind of smile. Those I do kind of respond to all that. Especially as a woman, we're told to smile, to be more likable. And so I really responded to this one as maybe, and let me hear from the other jurors as well.
Yeah, this one's tough for me. Like this group is tough. I think that I struggle a little bit with the maybe the I don't know, maybe like the quickness, but it's a really direct idea, and that's its advantage. I would say of the 3, this one is the one that I lean towards the most, so I'd give it a maybe.
I agree that of the three, this one is the most interesting to me. There's kind of a sarcasm and a sense of humor in this that I appreciate. Like that, just that linear marking over the over the portrait. The mark making in general is interesting. Yes, I would say maybe on the first one.
The first one also is giving me a little bit of a young Warhol vibe here. So maybe I'll change mine to a yes. And then on calm down, well, I hear the use of words again. It's really great. Totally calm down. Well, maybe we don't want to calm down. Maybe we want to get a little mad about some things. So I do. The other thing with this one that I like is how the hair goes out the bottom and then kind of comes in the top, sort of, I don't know, like some kind of bars or something. But I think color-wise for me, this one is maybe going a little bit too pure pigment, even though I know it's digital, it's not pigment-wise. But I think those colors maybe aren't helping in the way that I think the colors are helping in the first one.
Actually, this one's growing on me, and I'm going to give it a maybe. I think that there's really interesting things like, as Marcel was talking about the first one, this kind of whole idea about women being conditioned, and these kind of speak to kind of gaslighting in kind of clever ways. For me, like the braids hanging down has kind of like dark foreboding qualities as well. That I think that there's this kind of really clever mixture of humor and kind of like insightful social kind of cultural criticism. And I think that there's interesting figure ground things going on, like how the calm is behind her and the down is in front of her, and there's this kind of other blue line that's passing through that kind of acts as a kind of another layer of interest and energy without it kind of interfering with the message. So I'm here with a maybe.
Brigham, you've brought some things out that I see now as well, and I also see the social commentary and the humor. So I'm saying maybe.
This one, I'm going to say no, just based on this. The first two were, for me, had really strong, all these strong elements. We're talking about social commentary and ideas of gendered messages and these types of things. So I think those are the two strongest.
Yeah, and I would say no as well. And I promise to differ a lot with Marcella in the future. But the other ones were kind of like I think more kind of humane about like what it's like to live in skin, and this one's seems to be kind of like missing that for me. And so that's one of the reasons why I would give it a pass.
Yeah, I agree. This one is a no. The other two are much stronger compositionally, I think, and color-wise, and just their message seems to have something more to say than this one does.
Well, I can see that this artist is working in this particular image in a very dark room, and I think it must be some sort of crypt, I think. So kind of control of light and shadows is well handled. It seems to be just the way the artist found it, sort of as they saw it, and taking us to this location. I'm interested in this piece and the framing. I'll say maybe.
To me, it's so interesting to see the three works because kind of content-wise, they're so diverse. But how the second one is a gelatin silver print and the third one is a negative, it seems like this artist is really interested in kind of darkroom processes, and it's so apples and oranges that it's I feel befuddled into kind of like know why my preferences lie where they are. I would definitely give this one a maybe. It's my second favorite of the three.
Again, I'm agreeing with the comments by the other judges, and I think I want to give this one a maybe.
I'm going to go with a no on this one, although the the horse is trying to speak here to us through time and space, and maybe even bite us or something, right? So there's a kind of a sense of humor, and there's of course the proximity that photography can bring to the image, or feel so close to this horse that seems a little out of control. I think for me, maybe the composition is a little flat, and just the horse is right there in the middle, and the horizon's right there in the middle. I wish there was a little bit, it might be on the screen here, but a little bit more shadow detail.
Yay, I couldn't disagree more. I'm giving this a yes. And I think, it's really funny, but it's beyond funny because it's also like animal nature in a kind of a fresh way. So I'm drawn to those qualities, but also compositionally, I kind of am drawn to the flatness and how the horse breaks the horizon plane and gets a yin yang kind of vibe with the sky. And it may just be that I've never seen a horse make that face before, and I feel so kind of interested in that. So I'm giving this a yes.
I think I'm going to give this one a no. I'm thinking about some of the other photography that is in the entire group of the competition. So I'm going to say no on this one.
Maybe I might have to have some help kind of deciphering the referent here of this photograph, right? So I can see that it is a transparency from a film negative. So there's this kind of glow. So it must be the opposite, black spikes on something white. But I do like abstraction in photography, so perhaps it's intended that way. But maybe just for this one time, I'll defer here. I want to sort of see if someone can help me decipher this one.
I don't know if I can help. I mean, I'm just trying to kind of reverse the values in my mind, and it's not a potato whose parts have grown, obviously, because they're straight spikes, but it has some kind of organic thing that may be of a different scale than we're familiar with. But one of the things it does speak to is that we're both finding it mysterious. It engenders more than one interpretation, or it lingers in the mind because we can't name it.
I want to give this one, I think, a yes, because the artist is using this technique to create something that seems otherworldly. I think it's probably a cactus or something like that. That is some kind of plant that's spiky. The way the artist has inverted that, it feels like a creature from another world, or science fiction, or something cosmic. So I kind of and I appreciate that, and I just appreciate the composition of the abstraction as well, the image itself. So I want to give this one a yes.
All right, I'll go with a yes as well.
Okay, and I'll go with a maybe.
I'm going to give this one a maybe.
I'm going to give this one a no. It's of the three, it's my second in order of preference. I appreciate like the intimate scale and how it almost feels like marginalia on steroids, but ultimately it doesn't kind of develop into a gestalt that seems to be greater than the sum of its parts for me.
Okay, yes, I'm going to say no on this one. I think I'm interested in these as a series, but I think the other two are stronger, so I'll say no.
I like the different marks in this one, from the organic to the more linear. So for me, this one was a yes.
This is a yes for me. By far, this is the strongest piece. I appreciate like there's a pulse in this work where, there's like atmospherics where some things come forward and other things go back. And also the energy of the mark kind of informs the different shapes. It's not filling in, but it's actually an energy. So it just seems much more dynamic.
I agree. This is my favorite as well. This is a yes. I love the mark making, that some of it is brushy and some of it's very linear, the kind of almost ballpoint pen feeling. I love that. And the shifting in space that Brigham mentioned. This is a strong yes.
This was probably my second favorite. And I'm very impressed with this artist, all the different things they're presenting here to us. This one on an outdoor wood panel. And the colors, are working. I don't know if the dripping for me it doesn't feel as fresh as I think that all the layering in the second image that we looked at. So for me, this one isn't quite, there's some kind of unresolved areas. So I'm going to say no on this one.
And I'm going to say no as well. I think that it's interesting. There's a kind of a tell in this work where the title and some of the iconography let me in to know that it's actually kind of about a space. And I read the bottom third as a kind of a ground plane and the back upper 2/3 as a kind of a facade. And so I think that's kind of interesting to kind of understand what's going on in the artist's work, because I noticed like door kind of motifs in the previous two, even though those paintings were more quote unquote abstract. But I think that the kind of the anchor into kind of navigating space isn't here. It feels like more of the way that we go from one area to another. It's really hard for me to have any purchase on how to navigate it. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's not as successful.
Yes, this is a no for me as well. Looking at the whole series, I appreciate the color. I think that intrigues me, but I'm so distracted by the drippy areas that I think that's a little overkill with that particular technique or brush work, and I want it to be less of that or more resolved.
All of these pieces, and beginning with this one, there's a kind of a surreal aspect, certainly a narrative aspect, maybe even dreamlike qualities. They seem, though, for me to be like illustrations, perhaps, for maybe for some kind of a book for children. Kind of some of the softer colors. And so, it has a kind of a technical style that's a little bit looser, but I'm not quite convinced that the way everything is rendered is as technically, I guess, innovative or polished as I'd like to see. So I'm going to say no on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to say no as well. Of the three, I think that this is the most clever. The tropical island within the barn, and the kind of like the tension of the title called Confidence. That's the thing that intrigues me the most. But kind of building on what Marcella said, there's something about the way that it's the color and the technique and the form is executed. It feels kind of like almost like a dated kind of impressionism, neo-impressionism that doesn't seem to kind of have a reason for being other than that might be kind of a default technique. And so it doesn't seem like the form is supporting the idea, at least to me.
I agree with that. This is a no for me. I'm feeling that the very impressionistic sky and foreground aren't quite sitting with the rendering of the barn. It feels like almost like a different painting. So I'm going to say no.
This is also a no for me.
This is also a no for me.
Yeah, this is a no for me as well.
This one is a no for me.
And it's a no for me.
Maybe.
Maybe for me.
Maybe for me.
I'm going to say no.
No.
Maybe.
Maybe.
And no for me.
No.
Maybe.
No for me.
No.
No. No. I'm not quite convinced of the sort of handling of the media. But I can see the artist looking around the world at things to bring to the viewer. But I think continue to work on that media, get a few more hours in over the course of the year.
No.
I'm going to say no.
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 And no.
This one, no.
I'm going to say no with some editorializing. I think that details would really help because at least I cannot read anything from the slide like this. When I first saw it, I didn't know it was digital typography, and I was thinking about the performative nature of like writing the text. And also I kind of long for hierarchy where I would know where to go in and what's more important.
Yeah, I agree that a detail image would reveal a lot more about the work. It seems like it's important that the image is made up of words, but we can't access the words unless we're close to it. And so I'm going to say no.
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 Of the three, I feel this representation of Ruth Bader Ginsburg is capitalizing on, this person who is such a figure in our political life and in the United States of America, making incredible kind of commitments to all of us, and sort of that she was the notorious RGB. So, again, I can't make out the different words. And so I think it would be good to have a detail, but I can see that the artist is trying to make, it's kind of a significant contribution here in terms of her media and how the words then make up the person, and, how we use words to, in the news, right, to get a lot of information. And of course, RGB herself writing and using words. And so the power of words, how they make us up. So I'm going to say yes.
And I'm going to say no. I think that, it was clear, like with whether it's RBG or Frederick Douglass, I mean, obviously the kind of resonant figures. I find this one to be flatter with the kind of the heavy outline in the hair and so forth. I find the interesting around her, whatever you call the cloak, and how the words are kind of separated and more, we have more access to them. But I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no.
Yes, on the beauty of intermingling. There really is a lot of visual pleasure here. Of course, this kind of turning and turning that's implied. And the kind of just I'd love to see the sort of surface qualities of the enamel in person.
I'm going to say maybe. I appreciate the kind of the way of it being so fresh and spontaneous, but also kind of calculated. And I think that's probably its strong suit.
I'm going to say no.
No for me on this one. I'm a little distracted by the kind of spray paint aesthetic. I don't know if it's quite merging with the other aspects.
I'm going to say no as well.
No.
Here again, there's this kind of turning and this strange compositional force, but I prefer the first one, so I'll say no on this one.
No as well.
No.
I love all the colors this artist uses. This first one is not abstract. And I like the blank holes there. It looks like some kind of hole you could jump through. There's a lot of imagination going on. And of course, I am always interested in fabric details, so the embroidery that's there is interesting to me. What is that, 6 foot by 4 foot? I'm gonna say maybe.
I think this is the most interesting of the three, and I'll give it a maybe.
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I'm the bold, kind of bold patterns, and I mean, there's a lot of different colors, but the way they're muted really makes them mix. They look even buttery here on the screen. I'm gonna say yes on this one.
I'm going to say no. I struggle with its kind of stylization and a kind of a familiarity with a kind of an established genre.
No on this one.
No.
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 I'm really impressed with this artist. I think all three are interesting. This is, I think, to me, my second favorite, and I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
This is my favorite of the submissions. I love the twilight qualities, this kind of time that you know, a lot of things can go awry. And there's so many details. There's so much to see. It says 48 inches by 72 inches. You could really engage with a lot of the narrative qualities. Or, you know, some of the figures seem to. It's hard to tell what time frame what time they're from. You know, in terms of decades. And I love the architectural features, and then that is all set in some kind of a tropical forest. There's just a lot going on here. Yes, for me.
Yes.
I think this
Oh,
is a
sorry.
really special painting. I think it's just very ambitious and skilled and inventive, and a kind of a collage sensibility that holds together. There's kind of, as Marcella was saying, there's these kind of nuggets that emerge later, like the pants without the body, you know, on the bottom there. It's just, there's so much to look at, and for some reason, these disparate forms all hold together into a kind of a new union. It's really special.
Yes.
No.
No.
Maybe.
This first image by the artist of the dream of the hospital, I felt was the strongest. I do feel if the artist actually had kind of more similar things, we might get more of a sense of their sense of vision rather than the sort of very disparate works. But this one, this kind of vanishing point, the kind of mysterious cloak or yellow, of course, the colors kind of disturbing in a hospital, right? So there's some great aspects to it, but I don't feel the painting is quite resolved in terms of the painterly qualities. I think this artist continued to work on those aspects of it. No from me.
I agree with Marcella that this is this is the strongest of the three. I don't know if you said that, but it's so hard to get a read on the work since they're all three so different, and that there's I appreciate how there's like a lot of painterly investigation in terms of how things are formed differently. I just don't think it really holds together beyond the 1 point perspective, doing all the work to make the space. I'm going to give it a maybe.
No.
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 Maybe.
I think they're just the colors aren't quite. I mean, there's just a lot of kind of pure pigment feels. Suggestion would be to, sort of make those, find ways to, make those colors a little bit more complicated, if you will. I know we're referencing here the sky, and it looks like there's a very panoramic feel, which I do like. But again, just kind of continue sort of playing around with the potentials of color as the artist progresses. No, for me.
No.
No.
So all three of these show, of course, a very high technical competency and beautiful aspects to the metals, as well as here this agate that's featured, beautiful stone. So for me, I think that they would. I hope this is okay. They would look nice together because one of the pieces that I most respond to is the ring, which is coming up, but it would look sort of all by itself. So for me, I'm just already going to play my card here. I'm going to say yes to all three so that they could be featured together, which I think would be nicer than just one piece by itself. And all of them are obviously done with incredible craftsmanship.
Wow. I would say, in the spirit of like kind of thinking about all the three collectively in the decision making, I would say that the last two I would choose. I think that there's something about how the stones are featured, like within the settings and the kind of the metal work, where there's a kind of a more of a dynamic between the metal work and the stone, where the metal work is more kind of featured, where the first one has the chain making has a certain kind of more general quality that doesn't seem to be as featured, at least to me. So I'm going to say no to the first and yes to the second and third.
I agree with that. No to the first one and yes to the second and third.
Well, they're both quite different from each other. I love this one. No diving. I love taking this thing you just look down at your feet, no one would even look at, and of course turning it into this artwork, turning it into abstraction. This idea of photography doing this careful looking and then this transformation of what we're looking at maybe into something else. And it doesn't even feel like there's depth until you kind of recognize what it is, that it's the pool, and now you're looking down into the pool. So yes, for me.
I agree completely. I love how this is such an unusual view of the everyday, how it turns it into an abstraction, and how it's kind of totally fresh. This is a yes for me.
This is a yes for me as well. I love the texture that's created by the I guess the bubbles in the water and the surface of, like, you can almost feel that tape on the concrete. So I say yes.
No.
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 No. I'm interested in the portrait, but I'm feeling like these pieces are based in a photo, perhaps, and I think they don't, for me, get away from that. I can see the fanciful color and that there's some modeling to the, to the skin. But I feel like they could tell me more about the individual.
Yeah, I would say no, although I think this is the stronger of the two and it's headed in an interesting direction. I think that the way that the color in the background and the foreground are framing the face is very interesting, and how the kind of the pattern kind of moves into the neck, which is kind of curious. It's just I'm not sold on the execution of the graphite.
This is a maybe for me. I agree that it's the contrast in the media is moving in an interesting direction. It's just not quite resolved yet. Not quite resolved as a whole.
This is a no for me. Again, just really based on sort of use of the media. Just keep working on that. And so I think the stunning, what I love about it is this pink red flower zone, right? That cradles the figure's head and back of their body, like someone's pushing a flower into them or something. You know, we don't know quite what it is. And I think that part is really working in it. And he has his back to us. He turns like he's just gonna come around and see us here in a moment. So there's some tension. So I think keep capitalizing on those things and keep working on the craftsmanship.
I completely agree with Marcella. I think that, you know, there's a wonderful kind of sensibility that just needs to be backed up by a more evolution of technique.
Exactly. So Brigham, is that a
That's a no.
no? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say no as well. There are a lot of things about this that intrigue me, and I just think that it needs to be just worked out a bit.
No.
No, but I think that the idea of like this kind of reliquary within a print is interesting. It just doesn't come together for me.
No.
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 I give this a maybe. I'm intrigued. When I saw it the first couple of times, I didn't know what it was made from or the title. And I know that it's something natural that's been transformed. I find that the relationship of the geometry to the natural form and the kind of the pattern that's made by the shadows, if it could be replicated in the gallery, is quite interesting.
I'm going to say no.
Taking it right here into the contemporary moment of the pandemic, and then combining that with these various portraits. I'm wondering how the artist, you know, is thinking about the people that are being represented here. But I respond to these pretty strongly. This one's just tiny. I can't remember if they're all this size. I do have a favorite. So I'm going to say maybe here.
I'm going to say no to this one. It's not, to me, the strongest of the three.
I'm going to say no on this one.
No.
I'm going to say yes. And I think that the way that the drawing in the intaglio kind of frames the image of the other figure is really interesting in the confluence of the eyes. There's these kind of really interesting echoes back to Liechtenstein as well that doesn't feel like an homage, but it feels just like a referent and saying something fresh.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to say yes.
This one is my favorite. I love how the face just turns black there with all the ink. And then it goes over on the left and then up into this drawing where the artist really is bringing a lot to the surface and to the information that we're reckoning with. Whereas the other two, it's the figure and then the thing. This has like another whole area up there, almost comic like that you might also see in the news. So yes, on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to give this one a maybe. I appreciate how the text kind of creates this dark veil as well. So like this artist is taking advantage of like the text as a kind of an idea and a value. Give a maybe.
I'm going to say yes on this one.
I'd really like to see one of these get in. Particularly these first two are really strong, making this a comment on landfill and the waste that we produce. So I'm going to say a maybe on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's like really engaging and timely commentary and really good execution. And also somewhat hopeful, like making kind of art, but paying attention. I'm going to give this one a yes.
I agree. I'm going to give this one a yes.
Yes on this one.
Yes, this one's pretty special. You know, the kind of the capacity to kind of talk about like all this stuff in an infinite space through paint is pretty impressive.
I agree. This one's a yes.
No.
No.
And no.
Yes, for me on I Don't Make the Rules. They're both of the pieces are similar with this one to me has I love the line qualities. They seem to even be more exaggerated.
This is a yes for me as well. This is deceptively really complex and nuanced. You know, this idea of integrating collage and gestural mark making, where it all comes together, is pretty impressive. I think it promises to be even more engaging in person when people can spend time with it and kind of unpack what the newspaper is saying. I noticed that it was in different languages, so I think this is quite good.
I agree. This artist is doing some very complex stuff. There's even weaving. It looks like woven paper in the concept of woven in the collage. So yes, I'm very intrigued by this, and I want to see it in person.
No, just because I'm going with the first one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with yes. You know, I think that you know, actually seeing both of them simultaneously, and this is only 12 inches square, could glean more insight into what the work is about, and I'd like to see them together.
Yes.
No.
I would say no too, but I just wanted to add how difficult it is to understand what's going on in this one without a detail.
Yes. I'm going to say no. I think this artist is experimenting with some techniques with these materials, and it feels a little bit left up to chance, too much left up to chance, that there's not enough intention here.
No.
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 All three of these pieces are very polished. I'm intrigued by the use of materials and color and space and form. I love the titles as well. So on this first one, yes.
I agree. The titles are interesting, and they not just because they're interesting, but they kind of suggest what's informing this person's kind of concerns and invention, and it's a kind of a window into the work. And I think for me, like the first two are very strong. The third one, because it's mediated as a reproduction, it's less intriguing. This one is a yes.
I like the dimensionality of this. Those additions of wood are linear, and they cast shadows that are linear. I think that's very interesting. I'm going to say yes.
I love Italo Calvino and this reference to these cityscapes, the color, the handling of the cut paper and pencil, everything is really coming together. Just very intriguing work. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I would add, you know, like certainly Forgotten Cities, Invisible Cities, it's interesting. But also it's an interesting kind of use of like the kind of the architectural plan, and then kind of employing collage that talks about kind of like, I don't know, some kind of cultural kind of, you know, artifacts that kind of add a different kind of particularity to it. So those two layers together create an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think this is just gorgeous visually. the composition of it, the way the color is used in the lower half of the frame, but somehow it works. And I think it's so interesting the way these cities look like, to me, they look like letters, like some kind of language I can't quite read. And I love that about it. This is a yes.
It also reminded me of airplane terminals, airport terminals. I kept getting a lot of different references, which I love. So no, I'm going with the first two.
No.
Maybe.
The piece in front of us now, I think it has a kind of a naive style, and the way the body works, and how she's feeding the tiny bird. It feels very expressionistic here to me, and even her one eye, in this portrait mode, and yet the arms that are kind of more, and the hands are so giant, and I love all those aspects of it. So yes, for me.
It's very interesting how different this one is from the other two. And it's hard for me to understand the sensibility that links them together. And so I'm going to say no, because I think that the last work on Yupo is the most intriguing. And so, yeah, I'll say no.
I love the gesture in this work, and the grace in the figure, in the rendering of the bird. So I'm going to say yes.
These next two works feel like studies to me at this point, so no.
I'm going to go with maybe on this one. I think that the handling of gouache is a difficult medium, and appreciate like the sense of luminosity in this.
Yeah, I'm going to say maybe.
This one also feels like a study to me. No.
I'm going to go with maybe here. I like the other kinds of added layers of investigation, the kind of the notion of, maybe kind of like rot, and how that kind of is kind of supported by the kind of like the dispersion in the medium. And also it might be interesting to see this watercolor on a translucent support.
I'm going to say no on this one.
I can see that the handling of the media, the artist has familiarity with, some confidence to pull off a lot of different sort of collage-like layers. But I don't think it's tipping into fine art for me. There's this illustration quality, so no.
I'm going to say no as well. I just want to appreciate like the level of skill and the amount of time in the execution. It feels kind of like dated illustration, where I think that kind of compositionally and palette wise, it feels really familiar from decades ago.
I'm going to say no on this one.
No.
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 The artist is looking at the aspects of the world. I feel in each case that certainly the narrative elements could go a lot further into something surprising, or something we didn't realize we had missed. So no.
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 Maybe.
Maybe.
No.
No.
Oh, no. Sorry, Brigham.
No worries.
The unusual vantage point down at the woman's feet, looking up at her sitting on her bed, turning her into this monumental character. that unusual drawing technique is really working. But I have a favorite. So I'm gonna say maybe here.
I'm on the same page. I think this is my second favorite, so I'll give this one a maybe.
This one is my favorite, so I'm giving this one a yes. I like that monumental quality and the erasure of it, especially within the figure, gives that person movement, and I like that.
I love this image, and the idea of the Muybridge horse is captivating to me. Even what the main two figures are doing, sitting on these chairs, and one leans in, the other sort of kind of fallen back. They're just, really gets my imagination going, and the complexity of the beautiful charcoal finessing the representation of all of that. Yes.
For sure. Like, I think this is really interesting. It has a kind of a dominant image and then a kind of like a harmonic one. And so it reads very meta, but these figures like are really placed on the floor, and we're kind of there's this kind of pulse that moves through it. So it's not just the idea of Muybridge's, horse and rider, but it's actually like goes back to like the foundations of cinema. I just think that's really clever.
Yes, I agree with all of that.
No,
No.
No.
there certainly is a lot of stylistic license being taken by the artists that I appreciate, with the strange curving of so many lines of the hands, of the lid of the eye, and then what seems to be hair almost feeling like it's made of some kind of sculptural material. So I think there's a lot to this one. I'm gonna say maybe.
Yeah, this is the my second favorite of the series, and I'm thinking about a certain kind of humanism and a kind of way of seeing figuration as an abstraction, without sacrificing a sense of volume and stuff. And I think the work has a historical reference. It makes me think of George Tucker. I'm going to give this a maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to say maybe too.
Maybe the foreground, I love what's happening with the head and the hand again, but the foreground being so pale, in the kind of the eyes and the vase, feel like they're quite developed enough. Uh, I guess no.
And for me, this is a yes. I think that for me, like the way that the pale kind of high key areas in the bottom kind of conspire to group together to create a kind of a yin yang vibe between the dark upper part where they're interpenetrating, and it seems like to kind of take the lessons of cubism but add something kind of fresh, and I just think that it's working.
Yes, I agree, Brigham. I'm going to give this one a yes too. I think that kind of playing with space is intentional in this, so I'm going to say yes.
No for me.
No for me. I just want to say that it seems to be like the most ambitious because it's the most, there's the most stuff added, but it seems to the overall kind of impact seems to be the least effective in my mind.
I'm going to say maybe.
No.
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 I have to say maybe. I just think that it's really interesting the kind of the tension between flatness and kind of being up on a cliff, the kind of maybe the naive style coupled with the kind of the sophistication of two readings is compelling.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm going to say maybe.
No, for me on this first one, I appreciate the artists. They're all kind of holding together. I can tell there's some experience in terms of the development of the work. I think for me, one of the other ones is stronger.
Yeah, me too. I would say no on this one. It's not. I don't think it's the strongest one. But even though this one's abstract and the other two are not, there's definitely a common kind of sensibility and kind of building an overall sense of space and rhythm.
I'm going to say maybe on this one. I appreciate the way this artist is using all of this patterning, this repeated circular shape, but in multiple ways throughout the canvas, and in the way that plays with the form and the space. I'm going to say yes.
I like the two different kind of stylistic elements here. I guess the artist kind of showing off the chrysanthemum and these roses, that part of it, and then combined with something that seems to be reading as a reference maybe to the wooden panel or to some kind of watery landscape. So different, but they work together, and I think color-wise as well, even though they're, again, very different, very hard to bring those things together, and does it very well. Yes.
I would say yes as well. I don't know what cortege is, corsage. And, you know, I'd be interested to see in person, you know, how does the representation of, let's say, the wood grain eddies, how does that kind of use the panel as a catalyst? I can kind of get a sense of that through the reproduction, but not as strongly as I imagine. But absolutely, what Marcella said, it's so disparate in terms of like their subject, but it somehow it all comes together.
Yeah, I think this one, it makes you feel kind of itchy because of that, because of the smoothness of the floral part of it, and the kind of graininess of the wood, but they echo each other enough to make it work. It's very strange, but I'm going to say yes.
No.
No.
Maybe.
No. Color-wise and content-wise, I wanted to go further, stretch new bounds, and some linkage to content beyond the kind of sunset aspect would, I think, help more.
I'm going to say maybe. I think that there's a kind of like I sense a linkage to kind of like this kind of moment in time of winter, right, in the sun, like the heat versus the ice, which I find engaging, as well as the kind of the notion of this tension between abstraction and representation. So I'm going to say maybe.
I'm going to say no.
No, for similar reasons as the first.
No.
No.
Going more into, so what would be the right color? Here we have this kind of ombre rainbow that seems to be applied digitally. Really, what is the color? Where are the colors that you want would help this piece out, making some decisions? And then sort of the what we're looking at seems to reference these kind of like a coloring book. So that could work. I don't think it's quite, again, taking that as the basis and leaping off into new ground for me. So I'm going to say no.
I concur. I'm going to say no and think that this is an interesting starting point, but a leap is necessary for it to go kind of beyond the digital coloring book vibe.
Yeah, I agree with Marcella and Brigham on this one, say no.
This piece with the found and gifted materials, I love it. I think also the surface qualities of the, whether it was found and gifted materials, then painted. And then there seems to be these cutaways. So kind of cutting into the found and gifted materials, kind of destroying them as well as creating with them. So I love this piece, yes.
I agree. I think that there's a kind of a quality of where there's obvious skill and love of kind of developing different kinds of surfaces, but they're kind of at the service of a kind of a vision about like how this all adds up to kind of like how the grouping and the kind of the range of surfaces kind of create a new identity that's kind of fresh and interesting.
This is a yes, I agree. It feels much larger than it is when you look at the dimensions. It's like kind of a precious size. So interesting to look at. I think there's a lot to investigate and explore. And there's really nothing else like it in the competition. So this is a strong yes.
There's also a lot of strong technical aspects in this one, but I don't think it takes the materials into the kind of new realm and surprising mixture of objectness that we have in the other one. So no from me.
I'm gonna go with a maybe. I appreciate the kind of the how taking like familiar skills like whether like the woodworking and kind of using antlers. I've seen those things before, but there's something going on where I don't know. It just feels like there's this kind of juxtaposition of raw and finished surfaces, of like the manner of their joining being another kind of language of line that kind of rhymes with the cuts in the wood, and it just seems to be like really sensitively kind of realized. So I'll give this a maybe.
Yeah, between the two, the other one is just so much more intriguing to me. I'm going to give this one a no.
Right, I'll kick it off with a yes for this first one that somehow moves it, puffs up this black plastic area. And it's just beautifully handled, the craftsmanship, the surprise, and then just kind of puffing up. I don't know, reminds me, like a frog, under here, or just being filled with air, or just the way that things have an anima or something. It seems to have a mind of its own, when of course it does not. All those things work for me.
Yeah, I give it an emphatic yes. Other things that I'm picking up on is like it seems to be an inverted kind of house shape, and I'm guessing that when the black form blows up, it is like a soft house. So it seems there seems to be a kind of a strong dialogue there. And then with the title, the Hermitage for Ego and Ideas, it seems to be like the kind of in some ways self-deprecating humor, like the artist at work, and we become kind of larger than life in our own minds. And then this is kind of shedding light on that kind of silliness and with like an amazing sense of execution.
I'm going to give it a maybe.
The connection between, I think that the elements are there's aspects to them, the materiality and the compilation within each one, but they don't seem to go together. I think each one feels kind of like its own thing. I'm gonna say no.
Well, it's huge, right? So it's 10 feet across. There must be something connected, like with the notion of carnival games and these hanging sheets of metal that seem punctured by bullets or something like that, right? So it seems to be like a shooting gallery, and the pneumatic on the left seems to have something to do with guns as well. And so there's this kind of notion of fun and this kind of elegiac kind of thing about after the fall. I just think that it might be slow to unpack, but encountering the work in person would be revealing, and I would love to see it, and I would give it a yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a maybe as well. It is because it is so large. I'm intrigued by it, but I don't know if I'm intrigued enough for it to take so much space in the show.
The artist photographing out of an airplane. This is my favorite, and I say yes. Has certainly a Ed Ruscha reference to the parking lot, and yet here with color, and it's all, I think, quite beautifully done.
I agree. This is, I'm not familiar with like drone photography as art. I'm sure it's exists a lot, but this is my first encounter. So I'm kind of dealing with that novelty. But of the three, this one is the most intriguing. I love how it kind of announces itself as an abstraction, and how looking at like kind of like basically like the global economy in a kind of like a non-place.
Yeah, this is a yes for me as well. I'm intrigued by the light quality, those glowing areas. To me, it almost looks like a computer chip or something like that, some kind of machinery. And so I like the way that feeling, that abstraction echoes the kind of machinery of the processes of a truck stop.
No.
No,
No,
No.
no,
no,
No.
no,
no,
No.
no,
no,
No.
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 There's, for this artist, there's a kind of a visual shock value that can be effective, but I think here it's such the over arching kind of emotional quality to the work, and maybe finding some kind of balance, and maybe even the things going on around. I know that's intentional. The artist is choosing these, the orange in this case, and the kind of the pattern magenta and black, and then there's this additional kind of lighting that happens. But some of that I think is distracting a little bit as well from there can be some power, of course, to the representation of what we're seeing. Also, I think compositionally, just the centered quality of some of these things, we make more use of the composition as well. No from me.
And I'm going to give this one a maybe. I think like its centrality is kind of intentional as like an icon. It's hard to know the artist's intentions, but there seems to be kind of an element of kitsch and horror in the work, and hence the kind of like the magenta leopard skin and the style seem to be a kind of like a dark humor, or at least that's the way I'm receiving it. And with the lights as well, it seems to have a kind of an intentional kind of I don't know, like like something that brings in like outside of the fine art genre, if you will. And it's not my favorite of the three, but I think there's a lot going on, so I'll give it a maybe.
I'm gonna say no on this. The image, the drawing itself is kind of intriguing, but I feel as though that framing presentation is, I understand that. I think it's meant to bring more to the piece, but I think that it takes away from it. So I'm going to say no.
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 I'm going to say yes on this one. I just think it's really interesting, like this notion that is called a Serbian film. So it's coming forth with its source material, which is a kind of like, this is not a representation of a person in a mask. This is a representation of a person in a mask from a Serbian film, which kind of, at least I go to like the wars and genocide and all like that. And so I just think it's really interesting how like we receive what's going on in the other side of the world, and and then this person is kind of humanizing that experience of getting secondhand information that's kind of hard to fathom.
I'm going to say no.
No for me.
No for me.
No.
There's a lot of references here. We have the thought or voice bubble. Of course, it's referencing our latest crisis, pandemic crisis with COVID. And then it's in this little box and he's against the brick wall. It does have this also kind of a naive quality, although I can see in some of the other pieces that this artist is, has a range of work and they are familiar with their media. I do think this one for me has a lot of elements that are disparate but coming together to try to explain, a response, a human response to what we've been going through. So yes.
Yes, for me too. I would add, how it feels like a reimagining of a plaque in a way, right? Where I feel like this could be like in a high school hallway with the signage company using the old techniques and so forth, and it just has a kind of real wonderful kind of sense of humor of putting our moment in the perspective of looking back from the future.
I completely agree with that. This is a yes. I love that we can't understand what he's saying behind his mask. And I think even the rendering of the flannel is funny. So I appreciate the sense of humor throughout this whole piece. I'm saying yes.
No.
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 I see the idea behind this is like this kind of notion of the plague, and the kind of the materials are really interesting, like for this kind of scale of sculpture, that in some ways it feels like found objects, but in other ways it feels totally fabricated. I'm gonna give this a yes.
Let me give this a yes as well.
No.
I'm going to give this one a yes as well. And, similar to the other one, like this kind of notion of finding a kind of a metaphoric relationship to, our contemporary, crisis, the COVID crisis, and finding a fresh way to kind of express it.
I'm going to give this one a no, and I'm going to qualify that with the image quality. It doesn't seem clear to me, so I'm having really a hard time reading the surface of this piece. So I'm going to say no.
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 Another artist also really grappling with some signs and symbols of our time. There's a lot of negative space, which can be productive. I feel the artist could use that negative space more. And so this first one, I'll say no.
I'm going to say maybe to this one. It's actually, I think it's my favorite. I think that there's something about how like this person's use of like this kind of blue as a contagion is an interesting invention, and there's something about the humble presence of the rumpled disposable mask within the field makes like it makes the whole painting kind of equally important because the figure doesn't dominate.
I'm going to say maybe.
Yes, on this one from me, I think this is the strongest of the three. Although I really appreciate the artist is showing us a pretty tight series here, so I can get a sense of their deeper concerns and of their stylistic treatment. They're convincing me that the negative space is very intentional. And here again, we see the blue, and here I think it is. We could, even if we hadn't seen the other two, we would know it's a kind of something flying through the air, this kind of contagion, and of course referencing the bronze girl that faces down the bull on Wall Street. Again, a icon familiar to us all.
Yeah, and I'm swayed. I said that the first one was my favorite. I think that this one is probably stronger, actually. I'm going to give it a yes. It's an intimate scale and it packs a bit of a wallop for its scale. And appreciate all those references, Marcella, that you brought to your description.
Yes, I agree. I think it's intriguing that those glowing blue bits seem to be the parts of the painting that are not covered with paint. Like it's an underpainting
Mm-hmm.
that kind of glows through. So it's there's kind of an intriguing concept going on there with that.
Yeah, it makes it more subtextual and kind of less applied and more integrated.
Yes,
No,
No.
maybe.
this is a tight series. Everything shot in the library. And I love this series, and it's just something you go to the library, you don't think to photograph it, you think it's a place, a different type of place, but this interior that it has meant so much to so many people since its invention. This place you could go get free books. I mean, it's just I had never recognized until I saw this work how rife with you know um, visual information that it is. And but it's also, they're not spaces designed to be photographed, and so taking the quality of light that's there, and taking these kind of serious portraits, if you will, of the reader. Also another kind of a thing you might see in the history of photography, someone in a portrait holding a book, a precious object of the book. Of course, the book and libraries are very much predicted to disappear. The prediction is in the next 50 years, seeing a book, an actual real book, will be like seeing a lion in the wild is today. So I know, crazy, right? So I think these are of a certain place and time. So I like all of them, but I'm gonna have to choose probably one of them, and I do have a favorite. So let's start off this one with a maybe.
I feel very similarly, just to add on to that. And so this is not my favorite, though I think it's a very strong series. And so I'll give this a maybe. I did want to add on to what Marcella so eloquently said, that, there's this kind of humility of subject, and yet the lighting is special. There's this kind of quality of staging of kind of like the everyday person. So I'm thinking about like Candida Hoffer's, libraries, and then I'm thinking about coming down into, into like the suburban library, and how this artist is capturing something with a resonance as well, and I really appreciate that.
I'm going to say, I'm going to tip my hat here. I'm going to say yes on the next two, even though even one would be fine with me. But I love them together. I love the beautiful kind of Vermeer-like quality here. The light coming in, and the in Vermeer we see the astronomer, the scientist, someone weighing things, and here she has her book, but she doesn't look down at it. She looks over there at the another thing in the library is dolls for kids to play with, to make them feel really at home in the space. So yes on this one.
I too really like this one, and I liked them all, but this one would be a really intriguing complement to the third one. I love the Vermeer reference, Marcella. I'm assuming that the flower man has to do with what is in her hands. And it's interesting how the first print was, the first shot was in Washington State, and this one is much more local. I just think that it's so rich with its kind of this kind of moment of stillness and this quality of light, and it's just so rich compositionally.
Yeah, I see all of those things in it as well. This is a yes.
This is actually my favorite. Yes, again, got the fire, the thing to put out a fire, and I love the little book there. You're gonna know it, and just it's just how you found it, and yet seeing this place as so worthy of the documentation necessary for our time. So yes, if I didn't say that already.
Even though they're recent photographs, they seem fairly timeless, and I think that maybe that's part of the point. And I love the performative aspect of this artist traveling across the country and staging these things. This is my second favorite, and I give it a yes.
Yes.
This is clearly from a pretty tight series and a way of producing the painting in this monochrome. I have a favorite. I'm going to say maybe on this one.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
No.
Maybe.
Maybe.
No.
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 No. No.
No.
No.
No.
No.
No.
No.
Maybe.
No.
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 Maybe.
I like the color, but I sort of feel like they're just the same reversed. I have one other in the set of three that I prefer. No.
No.
Maybe.
No.
Yes.
Maybe.
I think this one for me, the color and the mixtures and the sort of those gray clouds and then the circle kind of maze-like forms, it's all working. Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
I like all of these. Again, it's a very nice series, very unusual use of the photo montage, bringing together these really disparate elements and kind of collage-like way. I guess I was looking for my favorite of the three, and it's this one. And I think it comes down to what's in the center here. It kind of drives us down into the center there, and then these interesting things on either side. Yes.
Yes. I think that's really interesting work.
Yes.
No, because I'm going with the first one and choosing one of the three. So no.
No for me.
Maybe.
And no.
This is a yes for me. I think it's really interesting spatially. There's a kind of a little bit of a dystopian thing about kind of like architecture and home going awry, especially in the midst of these superstorms. It's got me thinking.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
No.
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 Maybe.
No.
No.
Maybe.
No.
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 Maybe.
No.
No.
Maybe.
No.
No.
I
Maybe.
do feel, again, there's a lot of negative space that can be important. It's just not quite convincing me that what is happening there. I think that all of them have a very mystical quality, and of course, the encaustic is well handled. And a no on this one.
A no on this one. I'm going to tip my hat and say that the third one is the most effective, and the first two, I struggle with the figure-ground relationship, believing that those figures inhabit the space.
No.
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 Maybe.
In the detail of this one, I would like to see them in person. I'm glad that the artist provided the detail. The mystical storytelling, I think, comes through. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Very restrained work, and I think beautifully reproduced in silver gelatin. The surprising element of run over garbage. It appears. I'd definitely like to see one of this show. This one I'll say maybe because I have another one I like better.
Me too. I'm going to say maybe on this one. It's not my favorite.
Yes.
Yes, this is the one I feel. When I really had to look at, I thought I couldn't make sure of what it was referencing. I was glad because I don't think we had the titles, and I thought, oh, so good. Yes.
I agree. Yes, it goes back to Irving Penn and forward to the plastic islands in the Pacific.
Yes.
No.
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 No on this one.
No.
Maybe.
I can't quite tell. This one sleeping with Google and the next one sleeping with Siri. I imagine that someone has maybe fallen asleep while doing some kind of technology. I'm not sure. But based on the graphite qualities and the formation of this, and I'm intrigued by the narrative elements, yes.
I would say yes too, and just say that there's some kind of interruption to the description of the folds of the sheets on the left, and that kind of disc could be kind of a key.
Yes. Yes, Brigham, I see that, and I agree. I'm going to say yes.
Maybe I don't think all two need to be in, but one of these last two very well handled.
I agree completely. I think that they're equally strong, but that they don't build steam as a pair. And so I would recommend one get in. So since I said yes to the second one, I'll say maybe to this one.
I'm going to say yes.
No.
No.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
No.
No.
Maybe.
Maybe.
No.
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 Maybe.
No.
Accomplished series here. And I do have a favorite. I think in terms of I'm going to say the third one has this restraint that I find just completely exquisite. So I'm going to say no, because I'm going to be putting all my eggs in one basket at the end.
I think that it's really interesting how it reads in reproduction as a textile. And I'm going to say a maybe on this one.
Maybe.
No.
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 Yes. Just love everything about this. So satisfying. I mean, there are just a few elements, but I could look at them for hours.
Such distillation, maybe for me.
Yes.
This is my favorite of the series by far. Yes.
This is my second favorite, maybe.
Maybe.
No.
No.
Maybe.
This is my second favorite. So I'm going to say maybe.
This is my favorite. I'm going to say yes.
Maybe.
I think these must be incredible in person. Just the scale and the confusion, the breaking up of the landscape in front of us into you feel your body responding, and as the things swoosh around and completely change our expectations of time and place, and bodily relationships to the land, which we take for granted. First two are my favorites. I'm going to say yes.
I think it's a really rich series. All three of them are strong. This is my least favorite of the three. And so I'm going to say no.
I agree, Brigham. I'm going to say no on this one.
Yes.
I'm going to say yes as well.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes on 2.
No.
And this is my favorite. It's a yes for me.
Maybe.
The detail of winter 2020 seems to have different colors from the the main image, but I like them both. I like that the 3 hang in the first one, and yet there's some elements that line up and some that don't. It's very spiritual in the way that abstraction and verticality can bring that uplift to our minds. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate how local wild plant dyes. There's a sense of a holistic aspect to the whole process, and this one I think is my favorite, and I'll say yes.
Yes.
No.
I have to give it a maybe. I really appreciate the craft. It feels more familiar and less inventive than the previous one, but my hat's off to this artist.
Maybe.
No.
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 Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
No.
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 Yes.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
Yes.
No.
Maybe.
No.
No.
Yes.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
Maybe.
This artist has a lot of different approaches at this point, and I think tighten up this series that you give to the jurors would be helpful for us to get a sense of your concerns and your passions. No on this one.
I agree. No on this one, and that it would really be beneficial to have more consistency in the entries.
I agree. I'm going to say no.
I think this could be a whole series from a lot of different places. It's very unusual, again, kind of looking down into the shopping cart, but it doesn't feel intentional enough at this point. So I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no as well.
No.
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 Maybe.
No.
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 Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
I love this work. Reminds me of, I guess, Sheeler. And the colors are startling and but convincing. Of course, we're looking I guess at the shadow side here it's blue, but now it's just crazy, gorgeous, rich blue, not just the mild bit of a color cast we might see in a shadow. There's so many nice things to all of these works. I'm gonna say yes.
Marcella mentioned Charles Sheeler. I also wanted to give a shout out to Grant Wood and Louisa Matthias' daughter. But I think it's a really interesting series, and I'll give this one a maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
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 Maybe.
Maybe.
Jurors, we did not have any questions in the chat box on Facebook Live or Zoom. So just a reminder to our audience that if you have questions, please refer to the slide number in the bottom left-hand corner of the image and type your question in the central chat box on Zoom or on Facebook Live. So we'll move on to round 2.
I think for me, we could get rid of the first one of this. I think of these two, I don't know if we quite adjust exactly what we were looking for, but perhaps this is an artist we could look a little bit more closely at in terms of the choosing one or the other.
I think I agree with you, Marcella. And I would think about this one being the keeper. I think that it goes a little bit deeper into its kind of symbolism and in its intent because of there being more than one kind of surprise to it. So that would be my vote.
I agree that this one of the two would be my vote. Like the rendering of the portrait seems, and especially the eyes, seems stronger in this one.
All right, I concur. Crowned is a keeper.
It's the keeper.
Mm-hmm. The ring and the bracelet would look wonderful together in my estimation. I mean, these are real different from each other, from the cherries and the bird. Do we want to choose one of these? What do you think?
I think so. I think that this person in their development is not quite up to where we have those two people represented. And I think also that it's confusing because of how disparate they are. So I would choose one or the over the other. And in this instance, I would defer to the democracy of how you both selected this one over the cherries, and that we could eliminate the cherries.
Yeah, that works.
I think I was a big supporter of this one, but as long as the second one is in there, I think this one, I was convinced by the comments of its complexity, that it kind of rose for me over the top of the first one. So I think that focusing on this one might be better than having both.
I agree.
Me too.
I guess that's why I'm concerned, in terms of, is it the size and to me, it isn't as intriguing as that other piece. And, to put something, that it's going to be the centerpiece of the show. And I would want it to be, to have the backing of all of us, perhaps to give it that kind of attention, visual attention. I do appreciate all the elements of this piece. Again, for me, it just doesn't come together in terms of all three, exactly the relationship, even though I can see the concept for the piece is good.
Marcella, I'm with you. I think that for all those reasons, I think we should go with the pneumatic one and and call this one from the show.
Yes, I agree.
Of these two, I think like I might have championed the mask one the most, and then I was swayed. I think that it might be best just to have this one.
I'm okay with that.
Yes. Well, I love this series. As I said, I don't know if all three need to be accepted. For me, 2 and 3 are a beautiful pair. I could see them hung over each other even.
I agree. I think that two allows us to kind of understand the arc of the series, and that the
Yeah,
number 2 and 3 would be the ones, from my opinion.
I agree.
Oh, all three. Yes, I think we have to consider of this one, which 1 or 2 would be perfect there. Again, it's strong series. It's very difficult to remove one, but what do you guys think?
I agree. I think that we should definitely remove one. And I know that both of you were felt strongly about the middle one, and happy to defer to that. It's not as though I don't have strong
One is
opinions or
top.
that I'm not discerning. I just don't think that number 1 or number 3 are head and shoulders over one another. I just think that it's if I would defer to anybody who has a strong opinion.
I love the middle one because of the title. It tells us the subject is the bottle on the floor that we might otherwise miss. So just barely in there with just a little bit of negative space under, just enough. So this one, I think.
Yeah,
that
if I could add to that, there's that kind of bending of space with perceptual painting where you're looking down and looking out, right? And that it's wedded really skillfully.
Yes.
And the artist set up this crazy still life. I mean, I love the still life as a genre in photography as well as in painting and drawing. And it was such a complicated one, even with things on the floor, not just limited to the table.
I mean, I would say of the number 1 and number 3, I would say the first one kind of shows its hand as being a kind of a constructed image. So when viewers encounter it, they know how that is a real concern of the artist. Whereas in the third one, it speaks of more convention, and therefore the kind of like the fascination with space might be missed by some people. That would be my concern about the third one. So I would vote for 1 and 2.
I'm fine with that.
I'm okay with that too. I like them all, so it's hard to
Although that reflection of the
choose.
figure in the chair in the upper right's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
Somebody help me, I'm equivocating.
I agree. I like the echo of the stripes behind the figure in that little painting in the upper right corner. The echo of that with what is reflected in the mirror. Just like little devices like that are interesting to me.
All right, what about 2 and 3?
Let's go back to 1. There's something about this one that doesn't seem quite as finished as the other 2 to me.
I think you're right, Kathy.
Like it's kind of finished, but not quite finished.
Yeah, and maybe like the value structure is a little bit more limpid and less alive.
Yes, yes.
These also, those 2 of the linoleum prints. Here's another one, I think one. For me, this on adaptation, I think the colors are, again, they feel like they're out of the tube. Although I like the combination of the pixelation. But for me, the second one has a lot more elements that are strong and sophisticated.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit apples and oranges. The first one's trying to kind of retain a kind of a pictorial space and kind of wet it with kind of a complexity of, some disruption to that, where the other one defaults to a kind of organically arrived pattern of disparate things that ultimately rely on kind of color harmony and layering. And so, it's apples and oranges. And but I do think that this body of work would merit being pared down to one. So if you guys both have consensus on which one that is, that's totally fine.
I agree that it would be good to let one of them go.
I'm kind of liking this one more now.
Now
that
that
I'm
it's
looking
there.
at them. I don't know, those pixels are kind of really getting me now. And like I think that the organic, it sort of has a sort of quality to it. Okay, I'm going for this one. What do you guys
And I'm
think?
going to go for the other one. I'm just joking. I'm joking. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with 130.
Okay.
Let's
Sounds
keep
good.
let's keep 130.
Okay. All right, on this, I think when we were discussing, we were even thinking one of these rather than two. What do you guys recall of that?
That's what I said. It's not what Kathy said, so I can't say it was consensual. But how I feel is that, the two have such similarities, and that the point comes across with one, and that I think that they're equally good.
I'm okay with that. Do we have a favorite?
I think that they're both not really centered on the page. Not that that's critical, but I think that the Siri one feels more convincing that it's kind of off to the side, whereas the Google one, I sort of feel like it got kind of far over there, unintentionally perhaps.
I think also sleeping with Siri could be more of a double entendre. Without sleeping with Google, we might not think of Siri just as the robotic responder, but also, a human presence.
Yeah. I'm good with keeping Siri.
All right, both of these.
I was just so taken with Marcella's championing of the second one that I would never want to interfere with that. This one is fairly large, and so I would kind of suggest that we just do this one.
I
Yeah,
think that would be good too.
it's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
These are fairly large, and I think, do we have two? Yeah, we have both.
I'm happy with one and whichever one. I like them both. I love the blue one, but I think you guys are leaning more towards the second, and I'd be fine with that.
Okay, let's go with the first one.
Okay. What about, I think 3 was the most popular, and it's going to have a big impact. I think that would be just right for the show.
This one here, Marcella?
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally comfortable with that, Kathy.
Yes, I'm good with that.
I don't know about both of the weavings. I'm a big proponent of the first one. They're both very accomplished, though. Whatever you guys think.
I'm very comfortable with it being just the first one.
I'm good with that.
All right. I think for the fiber art quilt, again, one, we'll get the materials and the quality of the work across, and this taking of the formal qualities of the body and turning it into pattern and repetition, and using the fibers to reiterate that.
I agree. I would vote for this one.
I think that one also has the better of the composition with different things happening on the other end, and we see more of the animal, and we understand its sort of vast skin expanse in between, and I bet there's a sense of the surface of the animal's skin that's quite nice in the fabric.
Yeah, and maybe there's an analog between the fabric and the skin when one sees it in person.
I'm good with that.
So I felt like I was the one who was championing this work the most. And I realized that, like florals are a genre that feels in some ways so traditional that it's hard to say something fresh with them. I was struck by the handling of the paint and the luminosity, and there's something about them with these kind of darks backgrounds in the central thing that make them iconic. You know, like this one, these have these trap negative shapes that have a graphic quality that's in tension with the space. So, you know, I understand that irises have been painted for so long, and I understand if it feels too traditional in your guys' minds, that I understand. But I would say of the two, I would choose this one.
I could go with that. Yeah, I think of that as a noble tradition, right? I'm very much interested in this tradition of sort of botanicals, if you will, and how that's linked to science, and how that's linked to light, and just the impossibility of capturing these in paint, right? These at the moment of their beauty, this kind of thing. So, but I think, yes, probably one, and this iris I'd be is really nice. I'd be comfortable with that too. I like the other one too, but I think that
Yeah.
if we go with one, it would be this one.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with keeping the iris.
Although that magnolia blood is it kind of monumentalizes it, doesn't it? It has this Martin Johnson Heed vibe of like going to the South America. I love that echo. So I'm going to equivocate and say I would choose this one.
No, I like this one better. So again, I like that the feeling of the explorer in a new place and just trying to get it down and getting this capture of this bud in all its mystery, and at night, you know, it seems like night, or you know, almost in maybe even illuminated by car light or something. You know, I love that.
It's about its imminence rather than so we're getting there in time for the magic to unfold.
I'm fine with two of this particular artist. I think they're quite different. Really shows, I mean, the accomplishment of the sense of vision.
I'm fine with that too.
Yes.
I think I love the second.
Me too, big time.
Let's do that. Let's keep 147.
Okay.
Let go of 146.
Okay. Okay, welcome back. We do have, we'll bring one piece up entitled Blue Shadow. There was a question from an artist wanting more feedback on this piece. So we'll share our screen with that piece.
Should we just dive in with our thoughts, or?
Sure, this piece was excluded. The artist would like more feedback.
Yeah, I think it's a clever idea and composition, you know, like this kind of notion of a narrative that we experience only as a shadow. I think, you know, for me, compositionally, it's strong. And then in terms of its execution, I long for the shadows to be more transparent so we can see the information within them. And I think that would feel more kind of real and compelling, at least for me.
I guess I can jump in. it seems like the figure reached out for a lamp on a table that are casting this light. So I love the idea of the shadow, you know, like a puppet, right? A shadow puppet telling the story. I just wish I want the story to be more surprising. I guess often we do reach for a lamp, but what if we were reaching for something else? You know, in terms of the narrative elements, what is the, you know, the surprise or the emotional quality, or how do we become riveted by some authenticity of the movement or the feeling of being there. So I can see the painting is well handled. I compliment the artists on the technical quality that I see evident in the work, but I think something more in the narrative quality for me.
I agree with Marcella there about wanting a little bit more from the narrative. I think the composition is interesting, but I agree with Brigham about wanting a little bit more information, a little bit more depth within the shadow areas to have the shadow and the rest of the objects in the piece integrate a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. This is not a question about a specific piece, but Professor In Kim wants to know how much does the imagining of the overall show as a whole and the shaping of it come into consideration for a juried show like this? Or is it purely based on each individual piece?
I can start. As a curator, I put exhibitions together all the time and also work with competitive shows like this on a regular basis. And so I do take into consideration the entire body of work that was entered in the show, the diversity of the entire group that we are selecting as jurors, and how they might relate to each other in the space, in the room, the scale of the work, I think I already said the diversity of media. So to me, that is an important quality. I'm thinking about the entire group as I'm looking at each individual piece and trying to pull strength.
Okay, I agree.
To create the whole show.
Right, I agree with Kathy, particularly in the second round. You know, we knew how many pieces would fit in the show and that we had to pare it down. So that becomes a part of our mandate. So there is a requirement to pare it down, as well as do we need two pieces to show something about the artist's intention, or does one piece get across some kind of intentionality? And so I think particularly when you see our comments in round two, that we might love all three, but we might only want two for the show, or we might even need one for the show in order to fit in as many artists as possible that we felt were worthy of it. So.
Yes, and I would add that, you know, while we all reviewed the slides a couple times before we met, and so we had a shape of all the a sense of all the works that were submitted. It's really hard to know the dynamic of the jurying process until it unfolds. So that's one thing, and I know that Carrie was very intentional about choosing jurors with diverse backgrounds, and I think that really helps as well. And then you know, this sense of diversity actually is a good thing, rather than trying to shape it with a particular stamp, because kind of shaping it, like curating a thematic show, is at odds with the spirit of a juried show, where it's about kind of celebrating individual accomplishment, regardless of how it unifies with other people that are, it's so much outside of the applicant's control, it would seem unjust.
Okay, we have one more image to show. This artist would like some feedback on the decision making for the dragonfly quilt.
I felt that the other two artworks submitted by this artist were more compelling. They were also images of nature, of animals, but they kind of broke that animal into an interesting more abstracted field or shape. And I also just kind of appreciated the almost monochrome palette of those two pieces as well. I felt that color representation was a bit stronger.
I would say I would concur with Kathy. I think that the other two, the way that the stitching works with the surface of the skin has a very dynamic and conceptually strong quality, where the stitching actually talks about the folds of the skin, and that because the space is so shallow, there's more of a kind of a tension between the surface of the textile and the surface of the skin. So in this one, while it's really well executed, conceptually the stitching and the animal don't kind of conspire to come together to create something as metaphorically resonant for me.
And I think also because we aren't in front of the object and we can't see its materiality as well, you know, we're kind of looking at, you know, composition, we're getting a sense of the fiber, but you know, it might be a very different read if we were judging each item, you know, right in front of it, particularly with the fiber art surface. But one thing that I find could be improved on this image is, you know, the dragonfly is just the center focus, whereas maybe it could be to one side or the other, and we could see some of the things that it's flying over. You know, here it's the dragonfly, and I think really maybe open up that vision so that we get a sense of them flying through the air or lighting upon this fragment of a twig or something, might give us a reminder of the experience. I mean, when you view the dragonfly, oh, there's such a beautiful, you know, creatures that, and they kind of come and go, and, you know, maybe open up the idea of the composition a little bit more might help.
Okay, the same artist has some questions about the jurying process. Could you give us an idea of how much you look at these images prior to jurying together? And also what types of criteria the WVAC gives you? So you did address that we had size limitations. The art pieces have to fit through the door. They have to be able to be lifted with reasonable help. And the number of pieces has to be limited to a maximum of 55. Were there any other considerations?
I guess I'll go first on this one. So we all had the opportunity to go through the work and look at it ahead of time, and we all did. I think more than once even, and take notes so that we could get a sense of the body of work of each artist, as well as individual pieces, the elements of each one. We could kind of start to wonder what they are. And there's always there's certainly something about being very direct in the image that can be compelling. There's also things about ambiguity that can be very compelling. It's not kind of cut and paste one or the other. So we're allowed to, we're given access to the images ahead of time, and we all took advantage of really delving into them on our own before discussing them as a group.
And I would say, it's hard to be completely objective. And I would say that for anything, like for journalism, right? For being on the Supreme Court, but we all strive to do so. And I think that there's something about the process that really helps it, the kind of like the guidelines that the Whitewater Valley Art Competition folks set up, and as well as the sense of the procedures and the interaction of the jurors. And one of the things that came up in a couple of conversations in the jury process is how the entries from one artist, how they work together to kind of help the jurors understand a kind of a larger vision, so that when we're seeing individual works, we see them in context. And that really helps us kind of understand how the work samples are kind of like part of a kind of a deeper investigation in that. So how the individuals stack up with the group that is submitted really is important.
Okay, we're gonna screen share once more. We have a question about feedback on two pieces. One is Dreaming of Demian.
Yes, I felt that because we were limited in the number of pieces that we could select as a whole, and also from each artist, I felt that one of the pieces by this artist was more compelling and stronger. So I decided to choose the third image that we saw from this artist over the first two.
Is the question why or why not? Did something get in, or is it a kind of a request to just give a kind of a reading on the work?
The artist just said feedback.
The work to me is full of kind of drama and cultural references. So like this one reminds me both of a Renaissance painting by Mantegna of Expulsion from the Garden, as well as kind of like, young Western people in kind of dramatic projections of like dramatic feelings. And so I'm kind of straddling between those things in this sense of surrealism as well. So there's this kind of almost leaf-like form in the foreground, or this kind of falling things, and then the hand being kind of like haloed by the sun at night. All those things are kind of intriguing. And for me, I think that like formally the figures are strong, but I'm less convinced about how they kind of the surrounding context supports their sense of being in that space.
I think I went with the third one, and the other concurred with the jurors, because there was just a little bit more going on in the blank areas. In this one, there's a lot of space where there aren't many elements. Here, I think we just need a little bit more. The figures pushed way down to the bottom. But what could be, maybe this in this dream, there could be more elements.
Okay, we have another question about your process. Hannah Kuznia writes, how likely do you think your choices may be different, given you could jury in person? She says, just hitting on an important comment Marcella said about materiality and seeing things in space.
Absolutely. I mean, it can be different. Of course, seeing the artwork in person, there's the scale, there's the materiality, the surface. There can be, it's hard to photograph artwork. So, maybe in the JPEG image, we're not getting the whole story, in terms of how it's reproduced. So there's so much that can be different. Sometimes there's a process where there's an initial selection, and then the jurors need to see the work in person at the end, which is cumbersome, but certainly that's a part of it. I mean, when we look at artworks and you're right in front of the artwork, it's such a special moment, but it's not always possible. And I remind my students all the time, we have to make these websites, right? Because nowadays, people almost only see your work on your website. So it's important. It's critical. And can generate kind of the emotional quality or the response to the work that the artist wants. So, it is important.
Yes, I couldn't concur more. It's so important. And, as Marcella was alluding to, like the photography of the artwork is so critical, we long to see details, or sometimes in different lighting, with work that has a surface, maybe a detail that has a kind of a raking light to kind of amplify what's going on in the surface. And it's for better or worse, it's just part of the world we live in. A friend of mine who runs a prestigious gallery in St. Louis is selling most of his work online these days, without the work being seen in person. And it's kind of the it's certainly kind of amplified by the pandemic as well. So the notion of like documentary photography of the work and select details becomes all the more important.
Yes, I agree with what's been said about this issue previously. I feel like certainly I think it's most appealing to see the artwork in person, to see the quality of the surface right in front of you. But sometimes of course, it's not possible. And so we need to see the reproductions of the artwork. That's why, as both jurors, I think, said, it's important for us to sometimes to have those close-ups, those detail images to get more of a sense of the media and the surface quality of the artwork. That helps tremendously. There's one artwork that comes to mind that was a sculpture that inflated with air. And I wanted a little more information about that, like the rhythm of it, the timing of it, things like that. All of them, like the more information an artist can give us, the better. So that we fully understand the work.
Okay, this concludes our live Q&A for this event. The final exhibition has been narrowed down to 55 pieces with a broad variety of expressions and material. I want to say thank you to Greg Bryant and his students who watched this event in their classroom today. It's just another reminder that this serves as an impactful learning experience for students and professional artists alike. Thanks again to our jurors Brigham Dimmick, Kathy Mayhew, and Marcella Hackbart for their thoughtful consideration of each and every entry. They were joining us from 3 different time zones today. Congratulations to all artists selected to exhibit. This was a very competitive competition with just a 28% acceptance rate. We hope this event has inspired you to continue to create and share your work with a broad audience of viewers. This year's exhibition can be viewed in the Tom Thomas Gallery and the Meyer Artway in Whitewater Hall on IU East campus beginning October 15th through December 10th, and awards will be announced during the reception on October 15th. Thank you for joining us and have a great weekend.
Carrie, do you need us for anything else?
Great weekend.